to ask ourselves, am I making these changes to be a better version of me to offer that to the marriage? Or am I making these changes so she'll change?
Yes. Right.
That's a fine
That's a
line.
big difference. Yeah. Right.
You're listening to Get Your Marriage On, the fun and spicy podcast bringing you new tools and fresh ideas so that you can be the sexiest couple you know.
Hey, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast, and thank you for listening. Today, let's think about the qualities that make you successful in your career, such as working hard, being the first to show up and the last to leave, and in general, just being an achiever. Sometimes very capable and successful people have a hard time in their intimate relationships, and they wonder why. What if the same qualities that translate to success in one's career or workplace actually work against you in your intimate relationships? Have you ever thought about that? Well, today, my guest is going to talk about that. Her name is Rhonda Farr. She's a certified life coach and works with high achievers on their intimate relationships. I know Rhonda really well. We've been working together for a while. She's brilliant and has a lot of insight. And I got a lot out of this interview, and there was a lot, frankly, I could relate to. I suppose there's many parts that you'll relate to as well. Today is Friday, August 26th. And next week, Thursday, is September 1st and the first day of Sextember. You and your spouse are invited to join me in making this month your sexiest September ever. This challenge lasts for 30 days. See for yourself if you're happier and closer in your relationship by being just a little more intentional every day. All the details are in the Intimately Yes app, which, if you don't have, you should get it. It's free, and download it from the App Store. Just search for Intimately Yes. Rhonda, I am so honored to have you back on the podcast today. I think you are my guest number one for episode number one. It's so fun to we've been in touch. You've been my coach for a while, and I'm really excited to talk about this specific topic that you've been researching.
Thank you, Dan. I'm excited too. I am actually super passionate about this this topic and this group of people out into the world that are so unsure of what's happening to them, and they think they're alone and nobody else is going through it. So yeah, let's put a light on this.
So you're definitely not alone based on the Instagram comments I get and just the people I interact with. So let's quickly dive in. Tell me your story. How did you realize that you were an overfunctioner and how it was impacting your marriage?
Okay, so in my marriage, I always equated not enough communication, not enough connection to we just have a crappy marriage, right? And I felt like I was a really good communicator. I thought I was the best and my husband was the worst. I thought I was so good at connecting and being genuine. I was the best and he was the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Well, imagine my surprise when I was working with a coach and they said, you know what? You're really good at saying a lot of words. You're really good at presenting your side of the story, but are you really good at being vulnerable? Are you really good at sharing what's beneath that strong presentation of your thoughts and ideas? I was like, what do you mean? I'm very genuine. Almost like, what are you talking about, right? What I realized was I am really good at saying a lot of words, and I will tell you what I think and how I think it. If I feel strong, if I feel like this is something that I've sort of mastered, even if it was a weakness, if I've learned from it, if I've come out better on the other side, I will also share that with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm angry or don't like the way you are doing something, my poor husband, I'm really good at communicating that.
Pointing it out that there's a better way to do it.
Yes, like many overachievers, overfunctioners are. But what I found was I wasn't so good at being vulnerable. I wasn't very good at being intimate, which I was begging for. I was begging for connection and intimacy while cutting it off myself and blaming him for it.
What does that look like for those listening that may not quite understand what you're talking about?
So something that we often do, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a moment, but as an overfunctioner, we're really good at seeing issues to be solved. We're really good at working really hard at something and seeing a result that we want, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
And that serves us very well in tasks, in maybe running organizations, in accomplishing goals in the workplace. But relationships aren't there to solve the people that we love, right? It's not so great when we can constantly see them and see everything that needs to be fixed and critique everything that we would do differently. It's not so great, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was begging for this connection in this overfunctioner sort of way. Well, let's just call it all out. Let's just fix the problems and let's just run 1,000 miles an hour toward that goal and it'll be solved, right?
Right, right. And here's a spreadsheet and my
Yeah,
checklist and everything to keep you organized and on track
right.
with my plan. Uh-huh.
Totally. So what was happening for me was I was really good at that and really good at articulating all those things. Meanwhile, my husband was like not feeling like he could talk to me at all because if he did, I would point out what was wrong and what needed to be fixed, right?
Right.
I would point out all the things that I saw. So here we are, me thinking I'm really good at this and showing him this strong, I say that in air quotes, this strong version of me that's going to solve everything. And he's feeling like a disappointment, like he's not measuring up, right?
Uh-huh.
When we feel like a disappointment and like we don't measure up, how motivated are we to connect and be intimate with the other person?
Not at all. In fact, you feel a little less invested.
Right? And
Mm-hmm.
so here I am blaming him for not wanting to talk as much, for not wanting to connect as much. And I am squashing all of that. Now, not that he doesn't have anything on his side, for sure. There are things on the other side of this. But if we're just talking about this overfunction right now for a moment, we cut off the very thing we want most. And it's so tricky because that skill set serves us so well in other areas of our lives. It's hard to see how dysfunctional it is in the relationship.
Yeah, I can totally see that. So you see this pattern yourself, and then tell me about a time you like realize it's not just you. Others have it too. Is there like a client you worked with or like someone that you saw this pattern in?
So it was very interesting. They say we attract what we are working through, and I found that to be the case in my business. Like I started getting mostly men, a couple of women, but mostly men who are coming in and they start describing this exact dynamic. And
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you how it presents a little bit differently with the men. And I can tell you about one client in particular. He came to me because his youngest child was about to leave the home and he was desperate. He wanted his wife to stay. And he knew after this child left that she
Mm-hmm.
might not.
Uh-huh.
And he was a physician. So this dude's not even used to people calling him by his first name, right? Like he is
Right.
so used to running things. He's over all of these departments and internationally known, right?
Uh-huh.
He's really good at organizing and doing this stuff. His wife's saying, I don't care. I am done. Like I have felt like I've been put on the back burner. I don't measure up. You don't really hear me. I'm gone. And so for men, it often manifests when they're like at this oh crap moment. I'm
Okay.
about to lose it all.
Uh-huh.
Right. And another little symptom that is a telltale sign for these men that something has gone awry is usually they don't feel physically desired. They're like, I want to connect with this person more than anything, just like I did in my personal story, right?
Right.
And I want to feel chosen and desired in return. And I'm working, right? Like doing all the things so hard to make that happen. And I don't feel physically or emotionally loved, chosen, or desired. So when those things start to happen, they get desperate and insert my client schedule, right? Like where I find them on my calendar at usually somewhere in that
Got
region.
it. Got it. Got it. Wow. I kind of feel like you're like talking to me a little bit. Like I work hard.
Yeah.
I'm a CEO of, two companies and on top of that, I do this with Get Your Marriage On. I love, diving into relationship stuff too. And, you know, uh, I like to run marathons. I like adventure. I like achieving. I get so much satisfaction out of achieving that. And I'm very goal oriented. And I think these qualities of mine actually help me succeed in the workplace. But can we kind of boil it down? Let's list some qualities perhaps that actually are helpful in the workplace or helpful like in achieving in other areas, but actually And then let's contrast each one, how that actually is not helpful in the marriage relationship.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you a few things that I see in my clients. First and foremost, almost universally with these clients, they are really good at seeing something they want and really investing themselves and working hard. So sometimes people get a bad rep. You're not willing to work for that, or like, oh, this today's world, society, we're so lazy, these darn millennials, whatever, right? This group of clients they're so good at achieving and working hard. That being said, I have said a little bit tongue in cheek, not going to lie. I love my clients, so I don't mean this rudely, but you get a little spoiled that way because you're used to seeing something and being able to have it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Right. I'm not used to people saying no to me. That idea, right? Like, I know how to, if there's something I really want, I know how to work for it and get it, but I can't get what I want in my marriage.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of disconnect and frustration there.
So that's that contrast you were talking about. So then let's move this over to having a relationship with another human. We don't say, hey, I'd like you to desire me this way, put our head down and bulldoze through that and get it. You cannot force someone to choose or desire you. By definition, force is not being chosen. Force is not giving someone space to desire. It won't work.
Right. Which is really frustrating.
Exactly. So we're going to hop back over to this other side.
Okay, yeah. All right.
So frustrating. They feel like they're out of control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nothing I can do about this. And it's the one area of my life that I am desperate to figure out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here they are, and they don't feel like they have a lot of agency anymore either, right? Because I'm only married to this one woman. This type of relationship only exists in this one place. They kind of feel stuck almost in this spot, right?
Right.
So, and then here's the other piece. When they can't change the relationship by bulldozing through and working harder, there's a huge sense of anxiety that starts coming up because they have often used success in the workplace, success maybe in various other positions they hold in life to help them feel okay, to sort of prop up their position, if that makes sense.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And when they can't do that in a marriage, insert a ton of anxiety, right? Like, what do we do about this? Which is closely tied to that desperation.
Yeah, because you can't prop up your marriage with outside success it doesn't translate like the same way.
Yeah. So if anybody...
You can't go get more, I don't know, letters after your name to make you more desirable in your marriage. Like, it's not like that.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. So if anybody who's listening may have ever said, you know what, I've worked really hard for everything I thought I wanted, and I'm still not happy. You might be talking about you right now. That little phrase that comes up a lot. Like, I did all the things, and I'm still not happy.
Got it. Other traits I thought of preparing for this episode with you, I thought really good, successful people in general are good at delegating, but you can't delegate a marriage relationship.
Yeah.
People who are pretty successful, they can kind of stay on task.
Yeah.
When things get tough, even if it means setting aside some unpleasant emotions just so they can head down and work on something. And that doesn't translate well into a marriage. People who are successful tend to be able to split their attention really well. Like they can swap from one context to another quickly, but I don't think that works well in a relationship. They're really good at taking charge and taking the lead, which sometimes will work in a relationship, but not when you're creating a hierarchy where you're saying I'm more dominant or more important than you. That doesn't translate well in a relationship.
Yeah.
And also the first to show up and last to leave mentality of a lot of successful people, that doesn't work well in a marriage all the time either.
I would say too, that's one of those things that a lot of my clients will say too. Like, I am keeping everything together for everybody. I've got all these spinning plates in the air. I'm holding all these things. And a lot of times they're happy to do it, right? Because
Hmm.
they are control freaks, if we dare use
Yes.
that
Uh,
phrase, right? They're happy to do it. But at the same time, even if they wouldn't overtly describe it this way, there's this undertone of, I'm doing all of this and you're not even appreciating me in return. You're not even desiring me back. Like, there's this little bit of expectation, even though I don't think intellectually they would recognize it.
uh-huh.
But there's like, I'm doing everything for everybody and you can't even give me this.
Right.
I
Uh-huh.
see that a lot in this type of client as well.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, cool.
And then resentment. If I
Yeah.
want to go
Yeah.
back,
Let's talk about resentment. Yeah. Uh-huh.
it comes in, right? Because I am bending over backwards and I'm saying I'm doing it for everybody else, but actually I'm probably doing it because I like to be in control of everything. But I'm pretending it's for you, and then you don't give me what I want in return, and then we just get really frustrated. That's really hard. And for somebody who's used to having what they want to not feel desired, that's painful.
Hmm.
That's really painful. And a lot of these clients, too, what they're saying is, oh, and by the way, I'm feeling a lot of rejection.
Yes. But
Rejection
it
is
goes
hard.
both ways, doesn't it?
Yes. Say more. What are you going to say about that? And I'll say what I think as well.
Oh, sure. So the overachiever person is feeling rejected because he's not or she's not getting the desire that they wanted. I'm working for this. How come I'm not getting it? But
Mhm.
all along, the underachiever, or that's not a bad. How do we frame it? The under functioner, not underachieving, right?
The
Yeah, but
partner.
over functioning and under functioning. But neither place is a healthy place to be. But the under functioner also feels a lot of rejection because their say wasn't valued, their ideas, their input wasn't valued. It's like how can we have room for two in our marriage when you're taking up all the space and sucking out all the oxygen? I don't have a place here in this marriage. So they feel rejected for that reason too. What were you going to say?
Oh, totally that too. And I would probably just call them the partner of the over functioner or the overachiever.
Okay.
Because the truth is, inside the home, sometimes they're functioning very much, right? Like trying to take care of the pieces in the household. That's a lot of hard work sometimes too. So we want to make sure we give them credit for
Of
that.
course, of course. Yeah.
But I would say they're not feeling accepted as they are, which is what you were saying too, but I might use
Yes.
wording, right?
Uh-huh.
Because here's the other thing that the overachiever is really good at. They're really good at pointing out what needs to be changed. They're
Uh-huh.
really good at critiquing and seeing things, which keeps them climbing the ladder at work because
Mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful thing. We want to improve and expand. But that spouse over here, they're like, feeling like a complete disappointment to their partner, right?
Uh-huh.
They're feeling, I can never measure up whatever I do.
Uh-huh.
You're always disappointed in me. You don't accept me and value me for who I am. Insert resentment and rejection on that end. Exactly like
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that too.
Yeah, totally.
So, how do you work through this dynamic?
How do you work through the dynamic?
If you're sitting down with this was he a surgeon or this physician who's world renowned, really successful at work with a lot of moving pieces, and frustrated in his relationship, wife, last child's about to leave the home, is wondering if his wife is even going to stick around. Now you're working with him. What are some of the key things that you try to help him see and realize so he can make better decisions and act better and behave better?
So this is an unsexy answer, but this is the foundation. As an overachiever, we really have to take responsibility for our own emotions, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're waiting for somebody to want us, desire us, to kind of make us feel like the relationship is okay, to make us feel like we're okay and calm that anxiety. But we have to take responsibility for us.
Uh-huh.
Do we feel okay about ourselves, regardless of our achievements, regardless of any accolade or advancement? Can we feel what we feel and not have like the need for control, not have this compulsion for other things to prop us up and feel validated through external sources.
Gotcha. So I could imagine on the surface, people go like, oh yeah, of course, I'm fine. But when they start really digging in deep, they might have a lot of things that they've been ignoring for a while bubble up to the surface and probably need to work through and sort out.
Yeah, so I'm not suggesting that people who feel this way run out and do this right now, but if we want to put this to the test, then we would say, hey, go have a chat with your wife and put yourself in a vulnerable situation where you might feel rejection and manage that rejection on your own. Like, really recognize what that feels like in your body. Who knows, maybe you won't get rejected, right? But that's one of the other things that my clients present with a lot. They're so afraid to feel rejection that they often shut down their own desire, right? So they're afraid of not being desired. And then they're afraid of feeling rejection. So they in turn shut down their desire, which they hate, by the way, which causes a lot more issues.
Right.
That's a prime example of where we can feel that pain point and just get really honest. Can we handle these feelings?
And if you don't handle those feelings well and you shut down your desire, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you also become less desirable at the same time. So you lose your chances at having any desire.
It's an interesting dynamic. And like I said, I'm not recommending your listeners to run out and put themselves in that situation, but I do recommend that maybe they just ask themselves, if I stop over functioning, overachieving for everybody, what might happen and what am I afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
And then feel whatever comes up with those answers.
Great. Then what's the next step?
So taking responsibility of your emotions then gives you opportunity to offer a more genuine version of yourself. So for example, sometimes my clients will come to me and say, I noticed my wife said this or that, and I felt myself get defensive right away. Like, I don't even know why. I was just so defensive. And they'll say to me, I either felt like I had to be defensive in return, so protect, or just be a doormat, right? Like, and she just gets all snarky with me and I never say anything. And they start seeing things in extremes, right? Either she wins or I win.
Yes.
So what I would offer is when we can handle our own emotions, when we can feel that defensiveness or feel that hurt or whatever it is, and know that she's not responsible for that, then we might be able to just say, wow, I'm feeling a little defensive right now, and perhaps there's some hurt tied to this. And I just wanted to let you know, I know this is not about you, but this is something I'm noticing in myself and I'm working on this. This is probably going to sound foreign to some of your listeners, like I'm an alien talking.
Okay.
But this is the truer version of you. Like everybody wants to say, oh, you're asking me to say everything is fine and I love you and I'm going to constantly put myself out for rejection no matter what. I'm actually not suggesting that. The middle ground of that is just to offer a more true version of you when your emotions aren't fueling a lot of defensiveness, anger, resentment.
Got it. So that's step 2, kind of just be more authentic.
Yeah. Managing your emotions gives you opportunity to do that. And I wouldn't put these in a sequential order per se. These are just a few things that I would say they're gifts that you give to the relationship when you start to be aware of what's going on.
Great. Good. What other ideas do you have for people in this that can help them?
So another thing that I like to do when we can be a little bit more genuine and authentic is also just start being an observer or get curious. So what happens is, we've all heard this analogy about the iceberg and just the top sticking out and everything else is beneath the surface.
Yes.
When a client will come to me, they come talking about the iceberg, right? I no longer feel desired. Our physical connection is gone. My youngest is about to leave the house. Please help me save her. That's like a fraction of the iceberg, right? And they want to hyper focus on that and fix that. I say fix in quotes because whatever that means, right?
Right.
But when we can manage our own emotions and get a little bit more objective and a little more authentic, what we can do is we can start to look at how this dynamic was created. we can get curious about what our partner has been feeling. Where have we been contributing to their experience? Has it been in good judgment of them to maybe approach us at times or not approach us at times in the way that we've experienced that we didn't really like, right? I don't think we can overstate how important it is to just get curious about what's going on and how we got here.
Just to give this idea some more flesh, is there a specific story from your own experience or from someone you coached of this very thing where they kind of was able to live this experience better?
Yeah, so I have a client who I remember he said, I was driving back from this trip and I was like excited. I'd been away from my wife for a while and I was excited about seeing her. And then immediately his body was like, oh no, don't do that. And just squash that down, right? Because fear of rejection's coming up, right? And he said he gets home and she greets him and she's so happy to see him. And it actually was a very good greeting. She wanted to connect with him physically, right? And so we talked about that, like, okay, if you were able to manage your own emotions and know that you could handle that feeling, how might that have been different? And he's like, oh, for sure, I would have let myself feel that anticipation, that excitement, whether she followed through on her end or not, whatever, right? But it would have been way more fun for him. And then the cool thing is, he was like, and the truth is, because I had squashed it and wasn't really expecting it, I had a lot of reservations. Like I had a lot of trouble opening up to her. And then that wasn't really great, right?
Right.
And so he was able to notice by getting curious and observing this, how the exact thing he wanted in action actually followed through and happened, but he had way less appreciation and enjoyment for that. Right. And so we were able to talk about like what could have changed that. And then even getting curious about his wife's side, right?
Right.
Is she rejecting me when she says no, or maybe later? And if so, is that a reflection of me as a human, or is that a reflection of what she has going on? Right? Like we don't know. In different cases, it could be a different answer. But being an observer allows us choice and agency. Taking responsibility for us allows us to live a more fuller experience of what we desire, what we want. And sometimes it's going to allow us to feel some pain, but that's going to happen either way, right? Like,
right.
That's part of being a human.
Right, right. Ah, very good, very good. Any other stories that come to mind?
I mean, there are a ton of stories. There's so many stories. I think a lot of these overachievers, when they work with me, it feels like it can be a little disheartening if I want to tell the truth of this, because I just had a client tell me today, he's like, I feel like I just keep taking 3 steps forward and it's so hard to take those steps because we keep self-confronting, right? Like, how do I want to interact with her differently? And how do I want to show up? And he said, I can feel the change in me, but it's very difficult because she's not always responding to that change in the way I'd like. Right. So perhaps this is not the story you want to hear, but this is a very real part of this too.
Yeah. So it takes courage.
Yeah.
And you got to really decide, what is it do I really want? And can I hold on to that?
Yeah. And to add to that, we have to ask ourselves, am I making these changes to be a better version of me to offer that to the marriage? Or am I making these changes so she'll change?
Yes. Right.
That's a fine
big difference. Yeah. Right. Yep.
Yeah. You could go through the same motions, but your intention be different and have a completely different experience.
Let's talk about the other side of the coin now. You're the partner of an overachiever and you're listening to this. You're like, this is the experience I live every day. I feel micromanaged, or whatever the feelings are. What advice do you have for that person?
So first, let's just explain it a little bit. We'll just paint a picture of it a little bit more clearly. This person on the other side of this, as we already said, they often feel like their voice isn't really as important. They don't get to make as many decisions. They often just stay quiet because the other person's going to take care of it anyway, right? They often feel like if I go to them with this issue that I'm worried about, or if I present a true version of myself, it will be critiqued. It will become a problem to be solved. This person is often feeling like they aren't enough. Like,
Yeah, to add to that too, there's also the idea that the other person's more articulate than I am. They're
yeah,
quicker on their feet at thinking, like they're better at debate. So I take a while to process, but they're so fast, like I don't stand a chance.
yeah.
Like that's that's a that's probably how they feel too.
Yeah, and I don't even know if they have that much of a formulated thought, but that is the exact experience. In fact, that's my personal experience, right? I'm so articulate, like I'm not telling lies, but I'm twisting it in my favor, and I'm presenting the points in the light that is best for me,
Spin.
right?
We call it spin.
Yeah, let's go for that. And then the partner, meanwhile, over here, they're flooded, right? Like that's what we call flooded with stress hormones. Often they're in a fawn response, meaning like we just shut down, we freeze, right?
Hmm.
And the other person who's more articulate is just like overloading us.
Hmm.
We don't know what to say. We're stuck over here in this freeze response, right? And it's like, it's not even worth it. I'm not going to get my way anyway. I'm not being accepted as I am. I'm not going to be heard. It's not worth it. And then we just walk away. And oftentimes that person experiences some depression and loss of self. That's not uncommon for
Hmm.
that person to experience, yeah, low mood and even disengagement.
Gotcha.
And notice how this plays out, because what the other person is begging for, please engage with me. Please desire me. Please come closer to me. And this person's saying, sorry, I'm out. I can't even deal.
Yeah.
Just look at that dynamic, how we're both creating the exact same thing that we say we don't want, or squashing the same thing that we say we do want.
Yeah. 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 So, what do you do if you're that partner in that situation?
So you mean the partner who maybe feels less important, less
Yes.
accepted?
Hmm.
Yeah, this is a little tricky because we want that partner to feel heard and accepted, and oftentimes just their knee-jerk response. It's not like an intellectual thought anymore of, oh, it doesn't matter what I have to say. It's just an automatic shutdown.
Hmm.
So I would say create some awareness. Like when you're not in the middle of an interaction or a disagreement, start looking at the relationship and saying, where do I have a difference of opinion? Or where is a point in the marriage that I've conceded to what they want and it actually really matters to me? Where am I willing maybe to speak up and say what I want, right?
Right.
Or how am I controlling my own anxiety by not being true to myself, right? Because they get really anxious
Hmm.
when they engage in a disagreement, right? So
Right.
they control their anxiety by stepping away.
Right.
Where am I afraid to speak up? Where have I abandoned myself here?
Hmm.
So I think the questions are just a little bit different on that side of it. And I highly recommend self reflecting when you're not in the middle of a disagreement.
Gotcha. You'll be able to think a little lot more clearly when you're not in the middle of that disagreement.
And you'll be able to bring awareness for yourself first
Uh-huh.
without feeling like you have to deal with the other person's pushback or feedback in the moment.
Great. Maybe to sum this up, let's talk about what self confronting is for those that may not have heard that term and what it really looks like, and maybe an example of, of, of what we really mean by that and why it's such a valuable skill.
Yeah, so if you look it up on Google, you're going to find some different definitions, but I'm going to tell you how I think of it.
Uh huh.
For me, self confronting is asking, what is my responsibility here?
Yes.
How am I contributing to this thing? Probably this thing that I don't really like,
Uh huh.
right? Our knee jerk reaction is to say, I don't like the way this is. You need to desire me. You need to want me more. And then we start trying to fix the other person and ask the other person to move, shift, adjust. Self confronting is taking responsibility for your part.
Yes. Yep. And he's like This is fresh on my mind because last night my wife and I had a discussion about, because it's back to school time where we are at the time we're recording this. So there's a lot of decisions to be made about school, kids, what we're going to do, and things like that. And I caught myself getting really defensive on one of the ideas my wife proposed, and I got dysregulated, and I'm not proud of it. But I immediately went into my, I'm really good at logic. I'm really good at articulating things sometimes, and kind of taking her idea and like very kindly tearing it apart. Like, no, this is a good idea because this. Have you considered this? Well, what about that? And um, and I know like I know how to push just right to like point out some things to kind of make her doubt her idea, so that
Yep.
she will, you know, abandon it and go along with my idea instead. And in the middle of this going on, I realized what I'm doing, and I stopped, and I was so sorry, because this is not how you build an intimate relationship. If I continue this pattern, she's never going to want to open up and share her ideas with me. If I don't honor, at least listen. But the whole reason why I behave that way is I was caught off guard. I got defensive. I got dysregulated. I feel threatened by her idea. I wasn't, it's because it revealed something in me that I am trying to hide, it's a weakness in mine that I'm not proud of, or something, because I don't, so it was my way of like shielding, or like, because I was vulnerable about this idea, and I don't like to be vulnerable. Um, so it was my way of trying to defend and manage my own anxiety, was to attack her idea.
Yep.
But this is that pattern. If I keep doing that, we're not going to have that intimate relationship. So self-confronting to me looked like, honey, I am so sorry I did that. And kind of replaying, like sometimes our ideas are like bullet trains, right? They go down, they go so fast right in front of your eyes, and then the train's gone. But if I can replay that moment in like slow mo, and like, what was the thought? What was I feeling? Why did I feel this way? Why did I react that way? I could really pick it apart and say, I'm really sorry. I really didn't like this idea. Because it's not because I didn't think it was a good idea per se, but it was, I got defensive. And when I got defensive, I wanted to attack you and the idea. And anyway, so it's not a pleasant feeling to go through confrontation. And I'm not saying I'm good at it. I'm just saying I get lots of practice at it. But that's the point, right? It's these little micro moments when you can really like become just really aware of like, these are the patterns that we do that keep us away from each other. This is antithetical to an intimate relationship. And it's because I was caught off guard, or not caught off guard, caught off balance, because I wasn't rooted enough and strong enough. Like your first point you talked about, we need to dig deep below the surface of the iceberg and really get deep in ourselves. And it's kind of like, you're going to say it so much better than I do, but it's about realizing I'm good enough, I'm okay, I I can be solid enough in my own ideas. I don't have to feel threatened by another person's ideas or desires or whatever. That's kind of, I think, the root of it.
Yeah, I like that. That is my experience in my own marriage as well. Like, why won't you talk to me? Why won't you communicate with me? And then every time he communicated with me, especially in the beginning, I was communicating to tell him why he was wrong, to
Uh-huh.
prove my point. Exactly what you're saying, creating what I said I did not want, right? And then self confronting, exactly what you said, is being very honest with how I am contributing to the thing I say I don't want, right? How am I contributing to this quote problem that I see? I think a very simplistic way that we can self confront is to just say, what would it be like to be on the other side of the interactions with me? What would it be like for me to be that person and be spoken to that way and be treated that way, to be dictated to that way, whatever, right? To have lack of decision, to have the other person always be in control. that's a really good way to just open your eyes a little bit to what your side of this is. I think another question we can ask, I love to use good questions, is both partners can ask, when I'm feeling a little bit activated, right? A little bit defensive, like you were saying, let's let each partner answer honestly. Where are you not feeling seen? Where are you not feeling heard or understood? If we can tolerate our own emotions, here goes that cycle, right? Like that build upon these different skills. But if we can tolerate our own emotions enough to let the other partner be honest about that, that's intimacy. That's intimacy right there.
Uh-huh.
And self-confrontation when
Yes.
we take an honest look at that.
Excellent. Rhonda, if people want to hire you as their coach or want to find out more about your work and your research that you're doing, what's the best way for them to find you?
I would say just go to rhondafarr.com. You will see a little bit about me. You can find out how to contact me. I'm, of course, on social media, Rhonda Farr Coaching, but you can find me at my website.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. This has been so fun.
Good.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Get Your Marriage On. And if you did, we would love it if you would take a few seconds to give us a rating on iTunes and to share the show with your friends. They'll thank you for life. Once you've done that, you can head over to getyourmarriageon.com for more resources about today's topic and to download our amazing marriage apps. Now go get your marriage on.